Hello, everyone. What a wonderful crowd here tonight. I'm so excited that you are here with us and to know that there are people all over the world watching, thanks in no small part to Annie's decision yesterday that we should, no, I'm lied, the day before, that we should live stream this and let people know. So if Annie says to do it, I do it. Uh, I was going to introduce Annie last, but I have to introduce her first because Annie is a very dear friend of mine and the store. Annie founded our classes program 33 years ago. As with her critique class, we put a little teeny ad in the local paper. It wasn't even an ad. We talked them into doing it free. And we got so many people, there was just no way we could sort them all. We just took them in the order they came, and that was it. And by the time we let Annie retire a few years later, the waiting list was hundreds of people long. And I felt really bad. So Annie started doing an annual one for us. So after that, we started all these writing classes. We started language classes, culture classes. Now we even have mahjong classes. Some are online, some are only in person. And so that's all because of Annie. And the only contribution I made to it was to hold Sam when he was a baby and to play Legos with him as he grew. And each time he would get interested, say, I'm not interested in that, we'd find something new. We'd read stories. And that way, Annie could do the most amazing teaching. She's my friend, my business advisor, and she's my inspiration. So I feel so happy that Annie has introduced us to Mirabai over the years and also that she came tonight. And as far as Mirabai is concerned, what a woman. Now, uh, she's been touring and her books have been selling out everywhere with very good reason. Ordinary Mysticism is a treasure. I I engulfed this book. I thought, well, I have to read this book because I'm going to introduce Mirabai. No, silly me, I couldn't put it down. It's so wonderful. It's funny. It's inspirational. It broke my heart in places. I don't want to quote too much because I think that's for Mirabai and Annie to do, but there were things she said that I went, oh, I never thought about that before. As a nice Jewish girl who was raised that if you didn't go to services, you would be in trouble, I am so happy to know that the spiritual and the divine is everywhere, especially all the way out to all of you who are watching us tonight. So thank you to this philosopher, this teacher, this person with a deep sense of the divine and an absolutely holy irreverence. And so it is my pleasure to bring these two amazing women onto the stage. Thank you. Got your mic.
Oh, it's great to see you all. I love this is my home. This is like church for me, book passages. Um, so yeah, some of you know a lot about Mirabai, which is that she is the writer of a lot of profound and very welcoming spiritual books. And she's also translated a number of mystics, Julian of Norwich, is she, and all will be well, and all will be well, which I don't believe for a second. And uh, Teresa of Avila and St. John the Divine. I mean, that's a bit much, I think. I mean, when I found out she translated too, I felt like I wasn't going to be able to be close to her because I'm a dropout. And then we ended up years ago finding each other and just really finding each other. So I want to leave she'll read and talk a little bit about her book. I want to leave a lot of time for you to ask questions. I have some, but you have some on your hearts, and we just really want you to feel bold to raise your hand and stand up and call them out, and we'll repeat them. So, hi.
Hi.
Do you want to start out by telling us about the book and maybe pick up a copy and read from it or something like that?
Good plan, Annie. She
Yeah.
always has a plan.
I do.
Always has a good idea.
I always have I have a disease of good ideas. I'm in a 12-step program for people like me who have the disease of good ideas and tiny control issues. But anyway, yeah. So just tell them about your book and then read for us.
So the book was Anne Lamott's idea, which is why, which is why of this entire book tour, this feels most meaningful to me, to be sitting here with you tonight in your town, in your region, in your neighborhood. And I did have a wonderful experience here at Book Passage with Wild Mercy, my last book. And so there's a feeling of homecoming to be back, but to be back with you, where the origin of the idea was seated. Maybe I'll just start there briefly. Because you're right here. And the holy irreverence you mentioned, I totally get it from her. You've probably noticed. So I had the honor of interviewing Annie a few years ago for a summit on the mystics with the Schiff Network. And Annie came. I've got some Schiff family here in the audience. Hi, guys. And Annie came more prepared. It was an incredible experience. I interviewed 40 people that I consider to be on a mystical path or wrote about the mystics or were mystics themselves. And Annie came over prepared with this incredible outline. In fact, we had a hard time getting through it because we were just sparking all over the place. It was a very powerful interview and fun. And afterwards, when the Zoom thing was turned off, but we were still together in the Zoom room, Annie said, I think this is a book, and I think you should write it. And I said, people give me book ideas all the time. I don't know what it is. People are always saying, you should write a book about. And so I usually don't do it that way, but when Anne Lamott says you should write this book, I listened. And so I consider Annie to be the fairy godmother of the book, and she held my hand all along. In fact, she came out to New Mexico into my office and blessed me, gave me an incredible blessing. As if you've ever heard an Annie Lamott blessing, they're like her books. They're rich and juicy and complex and meaningful and sad and funny and all of it. And I wrote it, and she's been with me all along. So thank you, Annie. And my editor, Anna, is here. I have to, and we're meeting in person for the first time, although we have also Zoomed. But I just suddenly feel like I have to say the baby thing. So when I signed with Harper One, Anna was about to go on maternity leave. And it was good timing because I like to be left alone to write. So she went off and did that. And it gave birth to an incredible, beautiful baby. And I wrote for about 6 months maybe. And then we started this, the editing process is so intimate and so deep. You just become really close if you're lucky, as I am, incredibly lucky with Anna, to have this editorial relationship. And then, my agent suddenly, after years of trying, suddenly got pregnant as I was finishing the book. And then she had the baby as the book was in production. And then my assistant is having a baby right now. Yeah. Cat. So there's a lot of baby energy.
I hope I don't get pregnant.
I know.
Sitting here.
Watch out. Watch out, everybody. All right. I'm going to read 3 short passages, and then we're going to see what arises. I'm someone who takes off my glasses to read. So I don't know if you've read any of this yet, but it is my strong suspicion that you are all mystics. If what we mean by being a mystic is someone who has direct experience of the sacred, and that may or may not have anything to do with religion. It has to do with an aliveness that is available to all of us when we pay attention. This is one of the things that you've taught me, Annie, is that it's often a matter of simply setting your intention and paying attention. Or as Annie likes to quote from Father Ed, who, what would you call him, the spiritual director of Bill Wilson, and as he founded Alcoholics Anonymous, said that maybe heaven is nothing but, or just a new pair of glasses. That's kind of what this, just a new pair of glasses. Heaven is a new pair of glasses. That's kind of what this book is. That's probably the thesis, if there was one. So I'm going to read a short section called Guess What? The God you don't believe in is the same God I don't believe in. I'm not used to having a handheld and what to do with the cord. There is a persistent rumor that mysticism is inextricably tangled up with religion. Let me dispel this. Organized religion can, in fact, be an obstacle to direct experience of the sacred. Most religious institutions insist that you purchase their brand of God and forsake all others. Not only do they demand exclusivity, but they require intermediaries for anyone even to hang out with the divine. Priests and gurus with their rote prayers and circumscribed rituals. You have to pass through a series of churchy gates to gain access even to God's suburbs. And once you do, there is to be no talk of actual intimacy with the Holy One. The function of most clergy and their customs is to get you to live whatever they deem to be a godly life, not to actually connect with God, let alone to become one with God. Maybe God talk makes you nervous. You equate the word with the suffocating little boxes of your childhood, being forced to go to Sunday school, where you learn that God is old, white, male, and constantly pissed off. He floods the whole world when a few of his kids misbehave, smites cities and drowns armies, issues his orders on tablets of stone, making a big deal about the obvious. Of course you shouldn't kill people, unless of course you're God, or steal your neighbor's horse, or be rude to your mom and dad. It embarrasses you to even be included in the same breath as these nutty fundamentalists who take every word of the Bible literally and condemn queer people to hell. A true believer, you are not. And yet, there is a stirring in your soul, not because of, but rather in spite of religiosity. You sense the presence of something vast and loving when you reach the summit of a mountain, or stand up on your surfboard, or cup your hand to drink water from a stream. You recoil from the notion that a supreme being is keeping track of your lustful thoughts and yet cannot be bothered to prevent genocide or reverse climate change. If that's what God is, you want no part of it. More atrocities have been committed in the name of God than you can bear to ponder. You have no use for a magical puppet master with a grudge. Guess what? The God you don't believe in is the God I don't believe in. My God is sometimes goddess. She is often subversive, knocking over the furniture in the parlors of the privileged. My God rarely conforms to a fixed gender, embodying all the most life-giving qualities of both the feminine and the masculine, such as tenderness and mystery, discipline and confidence. My God both transcends anything I could conceive of and lives inside of everything I know and do and am, even religion. God sometimes can be found in the temple and the mosque, the chapel and the ashram. For example, singing the ancient Hebrew prayers on Yom Kippur, pleading with the Holy One to bring your wandering heart back home, can be a powerful catalyst for a mystical experience. Or holding out your hand to receive the Blessed Sacrament and looking up to see the face of the priest gazing at you with kindness. Or silently uttering the name of Allah on each of your 99 prayer beads and then starting again and again until Allah is carried on your breath. Or lighting a stick of incense and waving it in front of a statue of Hanuman, the monkey god, who orchestrated the rescue of the goddess Sita from the clutches of the 10-headed demon and cleared the way for her return to her beloved Ram, reconciling the sundered masculine and feminine faces of the Godhead and restoring balance to the universe. Reading the poetry of Lao Tzu can open a mystical state of consciousness. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. Or the Gnostic verse, cleave a piece of wood, I am there. Lift up a stone, and you will find me there. Or a gospel song, there is a balm in Gilead. The trick is to recognize anything that dares to stand in for the real thing and let it go. Anyone who claims that they alone hold the key to truth, any community that compels conformity and denounces the other. Mystical experience is an intimate connection with love itself. Mystics have no patience with proofs for the existence of God. They want only to find the holy ripening inside the berry patch, flaming forth from a broken marriage and a depleted bank account, permeating the dry land of an aging body and quieting a troubled mind in the darkest hours of the night. I'm going to read two more. Is that okay? Yeah. I don't feel like I need to explain them because I think they speak for themselves. Okay. This section is called You're Not in Trouble. Gazing through the eyes of love is the mystic's favorite occupation, but it is not only an outward turning gaze. Shine those love beams on your own dear self. If to be a mystic is to experience communion with all that is and to know it as fundamentally blessed, then you are not separate from that reality. You are as lovable as the ocean, the crying child, the serene yogi. My brother-in-law, Lance, has a saying, you are not in trouble. If you're anything like the rest of us, this message comes in handy at least a dozen times a day. I have totally adopted it. Sometimes I catch myself swirling in free-floating anxiety, and I tune in. I recognize that it's connected to some vague sense that I've done something bad or wrong, and when I inquire further into that feeling, it leads me to a more fundamental belief that I am something bad or wrong. The former is rarely the case, and the latter, well, never is. I am okay just as I am, and so are you. The reason I can recognize that shame game is because it has such a familiar face. But I can tell you, it is a mask, my friend, and I've unveiled it enough to know it covers something authentic and tender, something beautiful. Next time you send an email and then second guess yourself, did I sound needy or mean? Peel back the covering and reveal your true face. If you're visiting your mother and your brother jumps up to do the dishes while you're still enjoying a glass of wine and you feel compelled to help, take a breath. See what happens if you defy the family culture for a minute. Maybe you will give other members an opportunity to deconstruct the familiar patterns of guilt and try something different. something imbued with a bit more self-love, like lingering at the table to tell another story, hear a new joke, miss someone who's missing. So you threw a plastic container into the regular garbage instead of the recycling? The environmental catastrophe police are not going to go after you. You are not in trouble. We are so hard on ourselves. We can't understand how it is that years of psychotherapy and silent retreats haven't neutralized all our neurotic tendencies. It can be such a relief to let go of the unhelpful and untrue notion that you should be cured by now of all the personality quirks and mental patterns that have always plagued you. I'm sure you've made progress, and you will continue to grow. You will also fall right back into those old currents and flow downstream into the quagmire. What were you expecting? That you would become the wise guru meditating on the mountaintop? The radiant divine mother beaming her light upon all the pilgrims who make their way to sit at her holy feet? That some singular awakening is right around the corner, and pretty soon you will no longer be subject to the blunders and breakdowns from which the rest of us suffer. Good luck trying to recover from the human condition. I once heard a description of a condition Buddhists call dukkha dukkha. The Pali word dukkha is often translated as pain. When we have a direct experience of pain and stay present to it, we can breathe a big enough space around the feeling to contain it. A toothache, for instance, or a surge of jealousy, or a rotator cuff injury, or a fight with your best friend. But most of us tell ourselves a story about the experience. This totally sucks. I'm probably going to need shoulder surgery. Or, I guess that relationship is over. She'll never speak to me again after I pointed out that thing she did 11 years ago that I never mentioned till now when I needed ammunition. That's when we add dukkha to dukkha. Double dukkha equals suffering. Can you please be kind to yourself, even if just for a minute? Can you forgive your real transgressions, make amends, and move on with humility and humor? Can you stop inventing fake transgressions and carrying them like wounds in the palms of your hands, rubbing them until they become infected? Even Gandhi was impatient with his wife, and the Dalai Lama implied that homosexuality is unnatural. Yes, certain female spiritual icons have been known to use Botox. The enlightenment journey is just that, a journey. We unfold and grow as we go. Anyone who pretends they are finished is lying to themselves and bamboozling you. Give your sweet self a break for being a regular person on a path of awakening. You are not in trouble. I'm going to end with a very short piece that is, it's really a prayer for you. Rain of yes. All my life I have been enamored of the God-intoxicated ones, those rarefied souls who slip into ecstatic states and spontaneously utter poetry. The ones who exude deep stillness, embody equanimity, listen more than they speak. The initiated and the ordained. The monastics. You could recognize them by their white robes or their headscarves, the prayer beads wound around their wrists, and the scriptures from which they quote. If a talk show host wanted to interview a mystic, these are the exemplars they would invite into the studio. I wanted to be one of them, until I didn't. I want you not to want that as well. Instead, I want you to want exactly what you have, a real life with its clogged plumbing and flight delays, its cool sheets and steaming showers, its free-floating anxieties and spontaneous foot rubs. Girls' night out, Monday night football, the death of your favorite uncle and the birth of your first grandchild. Comings out and turnings in, your crises of faith. I want you to want to be exactly who you are, a true human person, doing their best to show up for this fleeting life with a measure of grace, with kindness and a sense of humor, with curiosity and a willingness to not have all the answers, with reverence for life. You do not need to chant all night in a temple in the Himalayas. You don't have to be the newest incarnation of Mary Magdalene. It is not necessary to read or write spiritual books. You are not required to know the difference between Mahayana and Theravada Buddhism or memorize the Beatitudes. All you have to do to walk the path of the ordinary mystic is to cultivate a gaze of wonder and step onto the road. Keep walking. Rest up and walk again. Fall down, get up, walk on. Pay attention to the landscape, to the ways it changes and the ways it stays the same. Be alert to surprises and turn with the turning of the seasons. Honor your body, train your mind, and keep your heart open against all odds. Say yes to what is, even when it is uncomfortable or embarrassing or heartbreaking. Hurl your handful of yes into the treetops and then lift your face as the rain of yes drops its grace all over you, all around you, and settles deep inside you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm definitely pregnant now. In fact, I'm lactating. That was really beautiful. Thank you. So what is it actually like to have a mystical experience? Is it a lot like being on an acid trip, would you say?
I love that question. No, I mean occasionally. Sometimes there are flashing lights, and it gets I feel very altered. But mostly it's exceedingly ordinary, so ordinary that you could easily miss it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you've been conditioned to think that a mystical experience looks like Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi turning in the marketplace as the gold beater is beating his drum and Rumi is dying of anguish that his beloved Shams has been killed, and he goes into ecstasy and then begins to utter spontaneous poetry for the rest of his life, and everyone writes it down on palm leaves or something. Or Anandamaya Ma, she was my version. And some of you are nodding your heads, Anandamaya Ma, the great 20th century Indian saint mystic who was an ecstatic. Ananda Maya Ma means bliss-drenched mother. And that was my picture of what I was supposed to be because I was a girl. If I'd been a boy, I would have been Rumi. But lo and behold, it's scrambling eggs and feeding them to your 2-year-old granddaughter, who then says something deliciously wise and cute. I can't think of what offhand, but those moments, and they're available to all of us all the time. So sometimes I do go into altered states, I must admit, kind of at the drop of a hat, frankly, and more as I get older. But it's not about altered states. It's about being present. It's like how meditation for me used to be a catapult to get me up and out of all this. And now meditation has become a welcoming home. So I feel it's a similar trajectory with this ordinary mysticism.
So you're making scrambled eggs for a child, and it's either just you making scrambled eggs for the child, or it is a mystical experience. And is it a mystical experience because of the level of attention that you're there for it?
You read the book, didn't you?
I did. But I mean, I don't want to have a bunch of shitty mystical experiences, so I don't want to just notice them and be aware. But is the awareness the awareness is the portal?
Right. The awareness is the portal to love. I feel like that's the difference between mindfulness, which is a useful tool, and many of you have probably cultivated a mindfulness practice of some sort and have reaped benefits from it. But it's more like the difference between mindfulness and heartfulness, between being mindful so that you can come back to some kind of equanimity and spaciousness versus a saying yes to the present moment as an act of love, as an offering. It's almost a devotional practice. Like, yes, I offer my attention to this moment because I want more than anything to encounter the source of love anywhere I can get my hands on it. And if it's through scrambled eggs, hallelujah, it doesn't really matter what form it takes. And it often takes, for me, the form of heartbreak, as a matter of fact. And for you too, I happen to know.
Can you talk about that more?
Yeah, so grief and loss, powerful, shattering, profound losses. Anyone ever had one? Yeah. Has this way of kind of stripping away the superficial bullshit that often preoccupies us and reorders our priorities, but really that stripping makes us naked, gets us naked spiritually. And when we're stripped and when we are flayed and all the extraneous coverings are taken away, the veils are lifted through the fire of loss, we often end up with extra access, I feel, to the sacred. And that's why so many of us who have experienced life-altering losses at the same time detect the fragrance of the sacred emanating from those coals, from those embers, from that burning. It's almost impossible not to feel that connectedness. I mean, it's quite possible not to feel it if you're taught, as most of us are by the culture, to get away from those feelings as quickly as possible. Like, your husband died 2 months ago, aren't you over it yet? But if we can invite ourselves lovingly into that fire, it becomes a mystical, transformative space that is drenched in love.
So there are two things. One, so you're saying that the mystical experience is the same thing pretty much as just returning to love. Just returning to love and being the love, and being in the Christian tradition, they would describe the Trinity as, or one way of describing the Trinity would be that the parent, the father, is the lover, or the mother is the lover, and Christ is the beloved, and that the Holy Spirit is the love between them, right? And so the mystical experience is somehow bringing you from I don't mean the ordinary, but from the ordinary into a experiencing it a couple of bullseye rings out from whatever ordinary thing you're doing. So it's like this and the child and the eggs, but there's a couple of rings out where it's connected to something that has to do with being the love or the beloved or the energy between them. And to I don't know if that's making any sense, but re-experience that existential spiritual identity as love, love and loved.
Exactly. That's it. That's it. In fact, there's a prayer. One of my traditions is Sufism.
Yeah.
Many versions or several traditions. But in the tradition of one of my most beloved teachers, Murshid Samuel Lewis, Murshid Sam, there was a phrase that we would sing over and over again: Ishq Allah, Mabud Allah. Ishq Allah, Mabud Allah. God is love, lover, and beloved.
Oh, interesting.
It's the same.
But what about when you just hate everyone
Right.
and everything?
You're not in trouble, Annie. We were when we were driving through the canyon in Taos yesterday. I can't even believe this. So was that yesterday? Yeah. Here overnight. It's ridiculous, and not the environmental catastrophe police are definitely going to be after me with all these plane rides for 2 days. But we were driving through the canyon. Anybody been to Taos? So we were driving through the Rio Grande Gorge from where we live to Santa Fe, and I turned to Gangadas, my husband, and I said, "Am I full of shit?"
No.
And so he's used to this. So he waited until I explained what I meant. And it was kind of that,
Yeah.
because I'm talking about how exactly who we are is what is beautiful. This endless self-improvement project that we've been fed as this there's this end result where we're going to finally have it all figured out, and we're going to be kind and giving and loving and calm all the time. And it's not true, and it's not helpful. And yet I still carry that myself, that feeling of I'm not doing it right, and it's the same old shit again.
Yeah. I know. I'm having this wonderful feeling of expansion and awakening, but then I was thinking about whether when I climbed up on stage, my butt looked fat. But what you're talking about, the love,
didn't.
Well, I'll ask Neil later, or Jeff. But the way that you're describing it, the state, it makes me think of the last story in the J.D. Salinger collection, 9 stories, called Teddy, where there's this little boy who's clearly a mystic. And do you all remember that? God, it's such a trippy story. He's been in Sweden with a bunch of scientists that are trying to chart the fact that he is operating at a level that is not linear and logical, that he's in another zone. And there's a journalist that's kind of horned in on him. He's just a skinny little kid in these baggy shorts. And the journalist says to him, "When did you first discover that you were in love, and you were love, and you were the creator, and you were the recipient, and all of it?" And the little boy says, "Well, one day I was watching my mother give my little sister, I think her name was Boomer or something like that, a glass of milk in her high chair. And I watched for a moment, and I realized it was God pouring God into God." And I think that's what you're saying with this is eggs, not milk, so maybe it doesn't apply. But God pouring God into God, so that you have that shift in consciousness where there's only this one thing, but it's wearing different clothes. And but so what about when everything is just making you, how do you access it when everything is just feeling stressed and worrisome, and you're just off? How do you personally step back into this other way of seeing the world and being?
Well, even as I'm busy deconstructing religion, I have to confess that there are quite a few practices I've picked up along the way that help a lot, as long as I don't use them to beat myself up and or try to prove something, but to take refuge in them. And so prayer and meditation, walking in nature. Um, those are my primary 3 places where I can take a breath and remember. And often because I've spent so much time in contemplative practices in my life, I'm quick to laugh at myself because I have learned not to believe everything I think, because when you're sitting in meditation, you think everything and then you think it again. and so you get really intimate with the mind and realize how much of it is not true. So I can often catch myself. But that's not to say I don't have stress breakdowns, because I do quite regularly. And then I'm usually able to chuckle at those too and forgive myself pretty quickly.
I know from knowing you that service is also a very important
Oh, yeah.
path for you. Yeah. Yeah. Can you just tell me if you have a question? Raise your hand if you're going to have a question. 1, 2, 3. Okay, there'll be a few of you. Yeah. I just had a couple more. Can you just tell people about this thing you're so immersed in right now, which is the Holy Lamentations?
Yeah, I think we have some holy lamenters in this room. Yeah. So my creative partner, Willow, and I made a space for people to gather online called Holy Lament a couple of years ago, and very quickly just blossomed into a true community. And it is my way of, I hope, being of service in this world. And it's not something I would have picked. When I grow up, I'm going to be a
Because people think
guide.
you're a buzzkill.
Yeah, right, exactly. Although we laugh a lot in our Holy Lament community, as you well know, Annie. So it's a space for people who are grieving and don't want to be bossed around by the culture telling them that there's a way to do it and not to do it, and a timeline and series of stages that you have to check off the boxes, and then you'll be done. You'll be over it. You'll move on. But rather, because of that fragrance of the sacred that permeates a broken heart that we spoke about earlier, there is this sense that so many people have when you've been through a profound loss, that God is in there somewhere, that grace is in there, that there is the presence of the sacred, whatever name you might give it. And I want to be there for that. I don't want what happened to me to have happened. In my case, it was, many losses in my life. Some of you probably have had many, multiple losses, but it was the death of my 14-year-old daughter, Jenny, in a car accident around 20 years ago that catapulted me onto this path because of my experience, my direct mystical experience of feeling like the divine poured into the broken seams of my life when Jenny died. I would have rather had her back. I would trade any mystical moment to have my child with me again. And no doubt about it, there was a sense of holiness that permeated everything. I'm trying not to use. I'm a writer and an editor. I don't like using the same word more than once in a talk. But what can you do? And I found that many other people felt that way too, and did not want to run away from their grief, and did not want to medicate themselves out of their grief, or meditate themselves out of their grief, to use spiritual experience as that wonderful phrase, as a bypass to get away from the experience, but actually to fully enter.
Let's take some questions
Yeah.
right now.
And you can find on my website, mirabaistarr.com, there's more about this community.
And people can enter into it just by going
three times a year it
3 times a year.
opens. It opens again, I think, in late November.
Okay, I want to say something. There are a lot of people online.
Oh, hi everyone. Is that the?
And then if you want a book signed, personalized, just call the bookstore right now, right? And buy. Is that right, Elaine? They call. Or go online to bookpassage.com. And in the comments field, put what you want. Okay, so questions. Yellow hat.
I just bought this beautiful hat from the store.
Fabulous.
First of all, I want to say that I've loved you both separately for a long time. Oh, sorry. I've loved. Can you hear? Is that better? Right up there. Okay. I've loved you both separately for a long time, and it was a delight to learn that you've been friends for a long time tonight. We drove down from Mendocino to see you, so
Wow, thank
I could
you.
have driven from Taos to see you both.
Oh,
Anyway, I took your course that you offered through Carolyn Meese's website, and the stuff on grief was so powerful and so beautiful. And I guess the one question I had from it, in my family, my grandmother buried 4 of her 8 kids. My mother buried 2 of my generation, and that the grief of the mother who has to bury a child. I wonder if you've thought or had any experience with the epigenetics of that, how we are carrying that grief and that loss through generations.
I mean, I think that's what's going on in Israel and Palestine right now. And so my children are adopted and mixed race, and I come from a 100%, well, I found out it was 99% Ashkenazi Jewish family. The other 1% is Greek or something, and Mediterranean. And so I've always been fascinated with genetics, but with ancestral trauma, it feels like, regardless of whether a family is connected biologically or not, there are patterns that are passed down. For instance, in my family, and I write about this in the book, the kids leave home young, just get me the fuck out of here. I'm leaving this house, and how painful that was. I did it, and how painful it was for me to see both my daughters want to do that when I thought I was mom of the year. So what's that about? We weren't related genetically, but I was noticing this pattern. But right now it is about to be Yom Kippur. Tomorrow is Erev Yom Kippur in the Jewish tradition, and we're in the days of awe it's called the days of awe, for those of you not familiar, between Rosh Hashanah, the New Year, and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. So it's like the gates open on Rosh Hashanah, and your prayers, God meets you way more than halfway. God comes running, like it says in the Quran. I take 2 steps toward Allah, Allah comes running toward me. And that's what this period is, right? But it's a time of reckoning. Teshuvah is the word returning in Hebrew, returning again and again to right relationship with God. But we do that because God is so unknowable and vast and awesome and mysterious. We do that alignment with each other in community. And this year, my community in Taos is really struggling and reckoning, and our whole identity as Jewish people is just seeing how hurt people in every day on the screens that on our devices, on TV. It is so obvious that there are these patterns of trauma that are recapitulated, and that is up to us right now to do something different. And as ordinary mystics, not only can we, but we must. We can't wait for the saviors. They don't exist. That is a lie we've been told. I hope maybe there's a savior or two in the mix there somewhere, but it's up to us. We are the ones we've been waiting for.
yeah, in the very back.
Thank you for coming from Mendocino. Do you know I lived in Mendocino as a teenager? I did. I lived in Mendocino as a teenager.
Yeah, I would like to ask if you would reflect on the role of synchronicity and reincarnation in your journey. And the other thing of what you just said, there is a wonderful group that I met about 4 years ago called Combatants for Peace.
Yeah, they're great
And
group.
they're doing a lot of good work on that. But anyways, reincarnation and synchronicity.
We have 5 minutes left. Yeah. Do you have something to say?
I have nothing to say. although when I have been at the absolute end of my rope with a death that I knew I couldn't bounce back from, it helped me to think about the person having done their work here and having known ahead of time that it was going to come to an end, possibly way, way too early, and that those few of us that were never going to get over it, pretty much, had agreed somehow to go through this, to have the love of that person. And I can't explain it very much better than that, but it's been a very, very intuitive feeling when I haven't been able to, I mean, I'll tell you, when I meet God face to face, I'm going to say, what the fuck were you thinking? I'm going to say, what were you thinking? Henry Kissinger lived to be 99. To me, that's the greatest spiritual question. But all I can say is that I have intuitively understood and kind of realized reincarnation a few times over the years when nothing else made any sense at all. But it's not, I'm a Sunday school teacher, like I'm spiritually as sophisticated as about a 7-year-old. So I feel really that this is not my problem and that you should address the question.
Is that Barack Obama and Isabel Allende? And then Annie Lamott and Isabel Allende? Oh my God. You should check that out later. So often when people hear the word mystic or mystical or mysticism, they think of things like reincarnation, like altered states of experience, like astral travel, things like that. That's actually not what I'm speaking about in this book. What I'm speaking about is the definition of mysticism that has to do with a direct experience of the sacred, whatever you may call it, independent of any belief systems or philosophies or even practices. I will say that I wrote a memoir about the death of my daughter, among other things. And there's a chapter called Believing Everything. It's very short, but it's one of my favorite chapters. And in that chapter, I try on all the possibilities of what happened to Jenny when she died. And at the end, I conclude, anybody, some of you are shaking your heads, so you know, or nodding your heads. They're all true. That was the only possible conclusion I could come up with, and I was very comfortable with that. It's the other thing about the mystical life is that when the mystical path is a path of paradox, it just it's like Zen stories that are designed to break you out of your ordinary kind of dualistic consciousness, right? The mystical mind has room for everything. Seemingly contradictory propositions come together to create a higher, bigger truth. And that's why I've never been a good fundamentalist anything, and why I've fallen in love with all of the world's great wisdom traditions, because they all carry some jewel that, or really some food that I need for my journey. So sometimes reincarnation makes a lot of soul sense to me.
That's what I would say. That sometimes nothing else makes any sense at all, but that. One more question. I thought I saw one more hand up somewhere. Okay, well then, as we close, I want to close with this Rumi poem, but I also want to just ask you, how does it change our lives? What are the benefits of starting on the path of the ordinary mystic?
It infuses our lives with a kind of childlike wonder. And who couldn't use a lot more of that?
So I just want to close. Thank you all for coming. Your faces were so innocent and attentive. It was really just a lovely audience. But this is a wonderful poem by Rumi that you probably have turned to many, many times, but it's called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Thank you, Mirabai. I love you. I love you. Love you.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you, Book Passage.
Thank all of you for being with us tonight and for being part of this congregation, and especially to Mirabai and Annie. If you want to see this again, it will be posted online. You'll be able to find it at bookpassage.com on our website. And frankly, you'll be able to find it on YouTube too. And if you decide you want a book, we'd be really thrilled because everyone you love should have this book. Thank you so much. Yes, Mirabai.